Crisis and stagnation. These are the words that can describe the state of humanity at the moment. Endless wars, unemployment, poverty, lack of healthcare, and hunger are just a few of the problems in which modern society is mired. Even defenders of capitalism are forced to admit that the existing economic system must undergo change. However, they only oppose too much unemployment and poverty. The capitalists and their supporters present modern society as the pinnacle of the development of human civilization. At the same time, communism, a society devoid of such shortcomings, is declared an unattainable utopia. Today, we will explain why communism is not a utopia, but a new stage in human development. Is communism an ideal society? The ideas of creating a society without hunger, poverty, and injustice have a long history. With the advent of private property in the state, the main problem tormenting people was the struggle between the ruling minority and the majority oppressed by the former. Existing within one society, a conflict of interests inevitably arises. It results in a bloody class struggle, which becomes the driving force of social development. Marx and Engels were able to reveal that the cause of the conflicts that arise is the contradiction between the social nature of labor and the private nature of the appropriation of its results, which is possible due to the domination of private ownership of the means of production. Communism resolves this contradiction by socializing the means of production and abolishing private property. It leads to the abolition of the division of society into classes. Instead of enriching a small group of exploiters, as under capitalism, communist society improves everyone's life, provides free access to education, healthcare, and housing. In addition, without fear of unemployment and poverty, people can devote themselves to self-development and realizing their full potential. At the same time, this does not mean that there will be no or should not be any problems in a communist society. The very implementation of the communist principle, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs, is a contradiction between the constant qualitative growth of human needs and the existing scientific and technical capabilities of society. The problems and contradictions under communism will be radically different from what we have today. The absence of contradictions between classes will allow solving and overcoming all emerging problems. At the same time, science shows us that each solved problem lays the foundation for the formulation of a new, even more complex problem, which proves the inconsistency of the point of view, according to which the communist society, having gotten rid of class contradictions and lost competition, would seem to be marking time. As we can see, Marxism-Leninism does not offer anything like an idealistic utopia. It is not a belief in a bright future that makes a person a communist, but a scientific understanding of the laws of social development, which makes it possible to see the path to its construction, with all the difficulties and contradictions that will need to be resolved on the way to a society free from oppression of man by man. Is human nature in contradiction with the building of communism? The main and most frequently encountered argument, which seems to put an end to any thought about the possibility of building a better society, is the notorious human nature. It usually comes down to such undoubtedly inherent features of modern man, such as greed and selfishness. The defenders of the free market and competition want to show society as a gathering of individuals who act on the basis of their own benefit, reducing social relations to a primitive all-against-all scheme. However, they always forget to mention other qualities of people that, for some unknown reason, do not belong to human nature. But it is precisely such qualities as collectivism, sincerity, and a sense of justice that have become one of the decisive factors in human survival, making it possible to unite individuals into groups to organize resistance to external threats and conduct economic life. In reality, there is no human nature recorded at the subconscious level or genetics, as well as determining the life and behavior of people. A person reflects the world and interacts with it with the help of consciousness, which is formed only in society. Social relations depend on the means of production and technologies available to society at the moment. When saying that social being determines social consciousness, Marx meant that in a society that has only the technology of making a simple spear at its disposal, people will have no other choice but to hunt together, because of which society will contribute to the manifestation of collectivism, because otherwise it will be doomed to starvation. Under capitalism, the alienation of workers from the results of their labor lends to the fragmentation of society into separate individuals. It is natural that in such a system of global sale and purchase, based on deception and exploitation of other people's labor, meanness, selfishness, and greed will flourish among people. The Soviet Union became the first country in the world to abolish private property and the exploitation of man by man. Most Soviet people understood the importance of labor for the good of the whole society. Brought up in the spirit of collectivism, the workers and peasants of the Soviet Union displayed mass heroism both in peacetime and during the Second World War. Thus, human nature is nothing more than an attempt by the supporters of capitalism to justify their own egoism and to reduce man to the level of an animal, attributing to him the vices of the most successful representatives of this stage of the development of human society. Are all equal under communism? To understand what equalization has to do with the idea of communism, it is enough to simply turn to the basic socialist principle, from each according to his ability, to each according to his work. Equality in a socialist society is not a disregard for the physical and spiritual abilities of people, but only social, economic equality. This means the equal abolition of the exploitation of man by man for all, equal access to work on socialized means of production, an equal obligation for all to work, and a uniform principle of payment according to work. Here's what Joseph Stalin spoke about this. These people evidently think that socialism calls for equalization, for leveling the requirements and personal, everyday life of the members of society. Needless to say, such an assumption has nothing in common with Marxism. By equality, Marxism means not equalization of personal requirements and everyday life, but the abolition of classes, i.e., A, the equal emancipation of all working people from exploitation, after the capitalists have been overthrown and expropriated. B, the equal abolition for all private property in the means of production. C, the equal duty of all to work according to their ability, and the equal right of all working people to receive in return for this, according to the work performed. Moreover, Marxism proceeds from the assumption that people's tastes and requirements are not and cannot be identical and equal in regard to quality or quantity, whether in the period of socialism or in the period of communism. There you have the Marxist conception of equality. Marxism has never recognized and does not recognize any other equality. The real communist equalization is, for example, when you don't need and no one needs to have rich parents to go to university. In a classless society, only the abilities and the amount of labor that each person brings to the common work, qualitatively improving not only his life, but the life of all mankind, is of real importance. Is communism even possible? The development of mankind is a continuous process where communism is the removal of the contradictions of capitalism and the next stage in the development of society. In order to be convinced of this, it is enough just to look around and you will see what unprecedented possibilities have become a reality thanks to the advanced thought of science and technology. Computers have made the most complex statistical calculations a reality, which would have taken a person decades without its help. The development of production capacities has reached such a level that the division of labor is no longer carried out at the level of one state, but at the level of the whole world, forming a single gigantic transnational production. Robots, drones, cybernetic systems, 3D printers, biomechanical prostheses, automated farms, clean energy, and genetic engineering, which existed only in science fiction stories, are becoming a part of our everyday life. And this is not to mention how many unseen technologies are at the conceptual stage, in the form of ideas and sketches. It would seem that the development of science and technology should have long ago coped with social stratification and poverty, but in reality, we are seeing a completely different picture. The introduction of high technologies into our lives leads mainly to the opposite result, increasing the gap between rich and poor. The fact is that technology is just a tool, now in the hands of capitalists, who appropriate the labor of scientists, engineers, and workers, putting the latest developments at the service of increasing their wealth. Moreover, striving for maximum profits, large transnational monopolies buy up developments and patents, placing on the market only the technologies that are the most beneficial to them, thereby slowing down scientific and technological progress. Under capitalism, abundance is only available to the rich, while the vast majority of the population lives in poverty. A vivid illustration of this is one of the constant companions of capitalism, the overproduction crisis. To increase their profits, the capitalists, in every way possible, increase the rate of production and cut costs, including the payment of labor. By increasing taxes and reducing wages, the ruling class creates a situation in which most workers cannot afford to purchase the goods they produce. As a result, we get a situation when, against the background of total unemployment, hunger, and poverty, food is being destroyed. The very nature of these things, as well as the potential inherent in them, requires from us completely new production and economic relations, a completely different approach to social production. Therefore, scientific progress requires us to bring the method of distribution of goods in line with the nature of production itself, taking the means of production into public ownership, directing technology and production itself to the needs of the entire people. Existing technologies are not the limit of development, but only its dawn. However, they alone cannot solve the existing problems. Only by combining production into a single complex and managing the economy on the basis of public ownership, the combination of technology with a scientific approach will ensure a stable abundance of communist society. Does the fall of the USSR mean that communism is a utopia? The restoration of capitalism in the USSR marked an offensive on the rights of workers around the world, and gave anti-communists a seemingly impenetrable argument in any dispute about the possibility of implementing communism in practice. But in reality, the defeat of the communists' first attempt to build a communist society was due to objective reasons, such as the technical and cultural backwardness of the country, the predominance of the peasantry and the remnants of past formations, the resistance of the overthrown classes, the fierce struggle of international capital against the socialist state, mistakes of the party leadership during socialist construction, and so on. All this does not prove that communism is utopia, but shows the difficulties on the way to its construction. In addition, the history of mankind knows more than one example of the restoration of the old order after revolutions. For example, the French Revolution ended with the restoration of the Bourbon dynasty on the throne, and the result of the Western European bourgeois revolutions of 1848 was the defeat of the revolutionaries and a new round of reaction. Almost 70 years of the existence of the USSR is only a moment in history, and in the future, new socialist states will inevitably appear. The October Revolution of 1917 and its social achievements did not pass without leaving a trace. It was the fear of the communist revolution and the struggle of the workers that made the 8-hour working day a universally recognized world standard. The victory of the Bolsheviks in Russia forced the capitalists of Europe and America to make concessions to their own workers, laying the foundation for such bourgeois ideas as civil society and the welfare state. The abolition of private property and the implementation of socialist principles in the economy and society made it possible to make a qualitative breakthrough unprecedented before in history. The working class, under the leadership of the Bolsheviks, managed to transform a backward agrarian country, which was destined for the fate of a colony by transnational capital, into a leading industrial and scientific power that conquered space. However, being pioneers in building the first socialist state, the Bolsheviks and their successors made a number of mistakes which, together with the pressure of world capital, led to the final restoration of private property in 1991. The Paris Commune stood for 72 days. The Soviet Union existed for almost 70 years, but despite this, capitalism is plagued by the same problems and contradictions, which means that the idea of communism is once again winning the hearts and minds of millions of people around the world, standing on the verge of new challenges and upheavals. Stay tuned.